Hey viewers and viewers, my name is General Red Strategist and welcome back to Sir You're Being Hunted. So we're back here in our usual map for another podcast style episode, and as you can see we actually only have one device piece to find on this island, and then technically this map is complete. So what I'm thinking is probably next episode, unless Phil or someone suddenly says, hey, I want to do a collab, let's just do a podcast style episode collab and all that red, because you know that's definitely how he talks. Yeah, unless that happens, then probably next episode we could do a challenge, I'm thinking, because Phil left me a suggestion I may have already mentioned before, for a bit of a wacky challenge idea, but one that in theory actually would make for a decent item hunting one. So you never know, ladies and gentlemen, that may come sooner rather than later. Now, other news actually in the meantime. So, you know how I've mentioned before on the channel that, of course, well, you know me, obviously, I'm into my backrooms and liminal space content. And so, you know, if you go through my indie horror playlist, if you go through my playlist in general on the channel, obviously you will notice that I have a number of videos and playlists where I've played random backrooms games. Some short ones, and some longer ones as well. And as well as backrooms games, obviously I've played other liminal space games more generally, like pools and liminal core, etc, etc. And you know, I think there's got to be at least one occasion in this Being Hunted series, hasn't there, when I've floated the idea of trying something a little different and actually also doing some let's watch slash reaction content of sorts to obviously not just Backrooms games, but also Backrooms YouTube content, because there's plenty of it out there, you know. Ever since Kane Pixels did, obviously, you know, his whole Backrooms found footage video and all that, there are a fair number of channels who basically have all sought to have a go at animating and creating their own sort of like retro style VHS visuals kind of backrooms found footage stuff, and some of them, you know, look like they are really, really good. They're really, really well made, which of course is something that would be absolutely awesome, like I say, to be able to do let's watch and reactions to. So the news really is that over the last few days I've actually been sending emails to various creators here on YouTube, you know, big and small, just asking them, you know, creators who've basically created some of this backrooms and liminal space content on YouTube, just asking them, you know, would you be happy with me potentially doing let's watch slash reaction and discussion videos on your content that would basically, you know, be me on camera actually watching your stuff, and your stuff obviously would be in the video, it would be in like the corner of it, occupying less than 50% of the picture. And, you know, obviously it wouldn't just be me watching it, bish bash bosh done, it would be me watching the stuff and then flowing into a conversation, so that way, you know, it's not just me kind of effectively plagiarising someone else's video, but it's me actually trying to add something on top of that. And so far I've had a couple of responses from some of the channels I've been in touch with, and both of the ones that replied to me so far, they've said, yeah, absolutely, be more than happy for you to do let's watch slash reaction stuff too. So I'm quite pleased with that, because that means, at the very least, there's a couple of channels with some really awesome looking Backrooms liminal space content on it, which probably would be very, very interesting for you all to see, and for, you know, myself to watch as well. Oh god, go away please. Alright, got that last device piece, which is great. Let's go on over this way then. Yeah, so two of those channels have said to me they'd be happy, so I'm really pleased. So at the very minimum, when I get a chance, I'm going to be recording myself doing some let's watch slash reaction content to their videos. One of the channels in question only has a small number of backroom stuff, so that probably would just be like one video. But one of the other channels who responded, has a little bit more, and some of the videos are only short, some of them are only less than a minute, but some of them are longer, several minutes each, so I could probably do a couple of videos reacting to their content. That's good. But in the meantime, I'm still waiting on responses from some of the other channels that I messaged. Some of the obviously these YouTube channels, you know, they have their public-facing email, which you can find from their sort of about tab and all that. So I just send emails over there. Some of the channels I'm kind of interested in, though, don't have public-facing email, so I probably have to try and find their social media pages and try and message them over on there. But the two channels that I'm still waiting on responses for at the moment, as when I record this, Kane Pixels, I really want to do some reactions to his content if he'd be okay with it. But at the moment, I'm still waiting on a response, assuming he's seen my message that I sent. Because that's the thing, actually, Kane Pixels, though. He's probably a pretty busy person. Because the thing is, isn't he actually working on like a full-length Backrooms movie at the moment? Something like that. I could have sworn I've heard something along those lines, that is a thing he's doing. So that's probably taking up a lot of his time, if I had to take a guess. Hence why I've not heard anything back from him just yet. But the thing is, I'm sure I have seen people reacting to Kane Pixel's Backrooms content before, so whilst I assume he would be okay with it, preferably I'd like to actually hear from him directly, so that way, you know, I don't want to assume, that's all, basically, and potentially, you know, annoy somebody and all that. The other channel that I'm still waiting on a response from, which I'd really love to do some reaction content to, would be Lost in the Hyperverse, who basically has some, like, found footagey Backrooms content, but features a lot of, like, different Backrooms levels, that kind of thing. So that would be a fascinating one, but like I say, I'm still waiting on response from that person, or team, or however many people it is who are responsible for that channel. But yeah, it's good that I've got a couple of channels that have responded to me already, and they've responded positively to it, which is pretty dang good. So, you know, hopefully once I get a time over this weekend, I'm hoping to maybe start recording some stuff on there, which is good. As well as, well, what I'm also hoping maybe tomorrow is get a chance also to start recording some Ruby retrospective reactions for Propaganda, since I've not updated that channel for a while. But we'll see, yeah. But Backroom stuff mainly is what I'm hoping to focus upon. God, yeah, it should be really interesting though, like I say. And if I don't hear anything from the channels that I'm still waiting on responses from, I'll maybe see if I can find their social medias, because it might be that reaching out to them on there is a better idea, I don't know. But like I say, there's other channels as well that don't have public-facing email addresses, which I would love to do reaction content to. So I might have to see if I can find their social media pages as well, and see if I can contact them on there, perhaps. But it also reminds me, actually, a question I had on one of my videos recently, because as when I record this, I did a let's play of a short Backrooms game called The Backrooms Recorded, and it was Loffy actually who commented on it, asking about, you know, my sort of opinion, if you were creating sort of like a Backrooms game or a liminal space game, what are some of the essential ingredients that one would need to include? Which is an interesting question, because having played quite a few Backrooms games now, as well as the old liminal space game, you know, there's definitely thoughts that I would have in that regard about what the answer would be to that question. And, you know, I always think there's obviously good videos here on YouTube that also answer that question. Super Eyepatch Wolf's, what's it called? His video, Liminal Horror and the Backrooms, Horror in Impossible Places. That's a good video. It's a long one, but he actually really does explain what are the building blocks of liminality, and therefore, you know, the things that if you were designing a liminal horror game or video or something like that, the things you kind of need to think about and include. Really good video, definitely recommend it. But I'll actually talk a little bit here about the answer I actually gave to Loffy's comment on the Backrooms Recorded, because like I say, it was a good question, really interesting one. But obviously with Backrooms content, I mean, as a minimum, you always have to have the yellow hallways in it, right? Because that's kind of the iconic Backrooms thing. based on the original 4chan post and all that started the whole thing. So you kind of got to have that. But obviously, you want it to be fairly sort of silent, because you want to evoke that kind of sense of isolation in the player or the viewer or the audience. But at the same time, you want the layout of it to be sort of slightly nonsense, illogical, weird. Because the whole idea is that the Backrooms is this weird location that, whilst it kind of superficially resembles something that in theory could have been created by humans, obviously the whole idea is that when you look at it, you have to realise, oh, no, this is clearly not created by humans, whatever it is. It's something really strange and weird. So that's something else you have to obviously remember with it. But liminal kind of environments more generally, obviously there's a few sort of factors that go into it. Again, the sense of isolation comes into play there, in terms of you want to sort of give your player or audience the impression that this is a place where they are alone and there's no one else there. But also, there's a couple of other things to note, and Super Eye Patch Wolf's video kind of picks up on this, as do other sort of videos about what constitutes a good liminal horror. You also want the environments, if possible, to evoke sort of like a weird sense of nostalgia or familiarity. So the trick there is to look back at sort of typical decor and aesthetics of, for example, locations and buildings that you've been to in your youth when you were a very young child. So you think of things like schools, libraries, hospitals, playgrounds or play centres, educational facilities, shopping centres or malls, as you call them in America, like hospitals, I think I already mentioned hospitals, doctor surgeries, or like transportation hubs, so places like bus stations, train stations, even things like airport terminals, petrol stations, or like gas stations as you call them elsewhere in the world. Places like that, and think about those kind of places that you went to in your childhood and the kind of aesthetic of them and the decor that was very much of its time, so like 80s or 90s or whatever. And so, you try and capture that kind of aesthetic, that kind of vibe in the design of the environments. So that, in essence, it captures that sense of familiarity or a bit of nostalgia. Like, it reminds the player or the audience of places that they remember from their childhoods or from their younger years, places that maybe they'd forgotten about, that kind of thing. So obviously the sense of nostalgia slash familiarity is one pillar of what creates a good sort of liminal horror environment. But also there's other aspects to it. There's also the fact that every sort of environment should have a theme of transition in it. And what sort of is meant by that is that if you look at the definition of what liminality means, liminality is all about states of transition, this idea of people sort of evolving from one fixed point to another. Super Eye Patch Wolf, again, I refer to him a lot, but I refer to him again here. He really does a good job of explaining it. It's basically an anthropological concept from an academic paper, but the idea is that, throughout their lives, people go through periods and states of liminality where they will sort of they'll start at one fixed state and then they'll go through a transition to another state. And so that's a broad concept, and it can be applied to all kinds of things. But the big example that Super Eye Patch Wolf uses is when you're just a teenager, for instance, where you're in this murky, interesting sort of transitional state between being a child and an adult, and obviously like your body's in flux, your hormones, as you kind of figure yourself out as a person. So that's like one of the big examples, but you can apply the concept of liminality to other stuff as well. So like, for example, political change at a national level in countries. For example, when you have an election, you can see an election as a state of transition from one fixed point of one type of government to another, that kind of thing. Or you could see liminality in things that are very small, for instance. Like, for example, maybe changing jobs, stuff like that, very mundane stuff. So in essence, liminal environments in those kind of horror games, like I say, you want them to be what you would call transitory spaces, or at least themed after transitory spaces. So basically what we mean by transitory spaces is the kind of locations that in real life you wouldn't live in them long term, and therefore they're the kind of places that wouldn't necessarily have personal identities imprinted on them. So the kind of places that you would visit and you would transit through in real life, but you wouldn't live in it. It's not a place that you would be inhabiting or dwelling in long term. So hotels, for example, are a great example of a kind of liminal transitory space, because obviously they're these kind of places that we're only, as humans, meant to dwell in them for short periods of time before we then move on somewhere else. Hospitals, probably also another good example of that, because both like hotels and hospitals, obviously, you know, they don't really have like a sense of personal identity of the occupants stamped in their furnishings and decor. They're very sort of clinical in that sense. So that's kind of the other aspect of a liminal horror environment that you'd have to bear in mind. And then of course there's just making them unsettling and a bit sort of eerie and sinister. And the way obviously you do that obviously is through like the nonsensical weird layouts that don't make entire sense, that are a bit alien and strange. Sometimes you use certain details that are out of place, or indeed like missing details, things that you would expect to see which aren't there. So for example, let's say like you did a liminal environment based on like a shopping centre or mall. You know, you'd have obviously like shop fronts that maybe have signposted names, but when you look inside them, they don't have much there. Alright, let's just end the map before I get killed.
Sir, you've done it. I'm bringing the device up to speed now. I hope you won't consider this impertinent, sir, but I'm amazed you survived. Hang on. We'll have you out of there in 3, 2, 1...
There we are, ladies and gentlemen. Another map down. Fantastic. Okay, well, yeah, I think looking at my clock, I do actually need to wrap this episode up round about now, because I got to jump in my car and head off to go and get a haircut, ladies and gents, which is going to be happening fairly soon. So, yeah, that's just some thoughts, though, about backrooms, you know, and liminal environments. What makes a good one? What ingredients do you need to have? Like I say, go look for the Super Eye Patchable video about liminal horror. It's a really good one. It explains a lot. So, yeah, other than that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll wrap up here. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast-style episode, and hope you're all looking forward to, fingers crossed, the start of some Backrooms Let's Watch / reaction content coming here on Strategist sometime soon. I was wondering if I should put it on Propagandist, since that's the channel where I typically have done a lot of face cam Let's Watch reaction videos, but then I thought, nah, I'm going to do it here on Strategist, because that's where the majority of my Backrooms content is. Well, not the majority, all of it, I should say. So yeah, that's what you got to look forward to, potentially. Right, social media links, Propagandist channel link, etc., all down the video description below, if you're interested. If you enjoyed, a like is always appreciated, and join me next time in Sir, when hopefully we might be able to get onto another challenge. Goodbye, everybody. Tank is now ours. Destroy the V2s. That's 1. That's 2. Get rid of those 3. We can also do some destruction while we're here. Kill a load of friggin' guys. Take that. Boom. Oh, what's that? Boom. Fucking barracks destroyed. Here we go. Oh, what's that? Another patrol? They're not going to do shit to me. I don't know why even bothering. They're not going to kill me. It's just as well they can't use the anti-tank guns and all that. Oh, what's that? Boom. You can't do shit to me. Barracks destroyed. You can destroy all the buildings, basically.